Don't throw away eggshells. The $0 calcium fix your garden is missing. Picture this. A beautiful August morning. You walk out to the garden, coffee in hand, and there they are. Your tomatoes, heavy on the vine, almost ready. You reach for the biggest one, turn it over, and your stomach drops. A dark, sunken, rotting patch stares back at you. Blossom end rot. That ugly black scar has ruined more harvests than any pest or drought. And here is what makes it sting even worse. The cure was sitting on your kitchen counter this whole time. You threw it in the trash this morning. You threw it away yesterday too. Probably every single day this year. Eggshells. But before you rush to the kitchen and start crushing them into your flower beds, stop. Because the way most gardeners use eggshells, it does almost nothing. And in some cases, it actually makes things worse. What you are about to learn changes everything. 1. The Great Eggshell Illusion. Here is a gardening trick that has been passed down for decades. Crush your eggshells, scatter the sharp pieces around your plants, and the jagged edges will slice up slugs and keep them away. Sounds perfectly logical. There is just one problem. It does not work. Slugs produce a thick layer of protective mucus. That slime lets them glide across broken glass, across razor blades, and yes, right over crushed eggshells without a scratch. Researchers have filmed it. The slugs do not even slow down, and it gets worse. If those shells still have traces of raw egg white on them, the protein residue can actually attract slugs and rodents. So, instead of building a barrier, you may have been laying out a welcome mat. Now, what about the calcium? Surely tossing crushed shells around your tomatoes feeds them, right? Not exactly. Eggshells are roughly 95% calcium carbonate. That is a massive amount of calcium locked inside. But locked is the key word. In their raw, roughly crushed form, those shells are nearly insoluble. They just sit there. Field studies show large eggshell fragments can remain in soil for 3 to 4 years with almost zero breakdown. Archaeologists have dug up recognizable eggshell pieces from sites that are centuries old. So all that calcium is inches from your plant's roots, but completely out of reach. The vault is sealed shut. The real question is, how do you crack that vault open? That requires a method most gardeners have never heard of, and it starts with understanding exactly why your plants are starving in the first place. 2. The anatomy of a miracle. Why does calcium matter so much? What is it actually doing inside a plant? Think of calcium as the mortar between bricks. Inside your tomato, your pepper, your melon, calcium forms a compound called calcium pectate. It is the glue that holds plant cells together. When calcium is abundant, cell walls grow thick and rigid, stems stand tall, fruit holds its shape under weight, and pathogens, the fungi that try to dissolve their way inside, hit a wall they cannot break through. But here is the detail that changes everything. Calcium does not move inside a plant. Nitrogen can travel. Potassium can travel. When those nutrients run low in new growth, the plant borrows from older leaves. Calcium cannot do that. Once calcium is deposited in a cell wall, it stays there permanently. The only way calcium reaches the tips of leaves and the ends of developing fruit is through water. The transpiration stream, water flowing up from the roots, carries calcium with it. As long as water keeps moving, calcium keeps arriving. Now think about what happens during a July heat wave, or a stretch where you forgot to water, or even just inconsistent watering, soaked one day, dry the next. The water flow slows. The calcium delivery stops. The older parts of the plant are fine, they already got their calcium. But the brand new cells forming at the bottom of that green tomato? They are starving. They swell without structure. Their walls collapse. The tissue dies. By the time you see the black patch, the damage happened days ago. Blossom end rot is not a disease, it is a calcium delivery failure. So the solution is not just having calcium in the soil. The solution is having calcium in a form your plants can actually absorb. Right now, not 3 years from now. And there is a centuries-old technique that does exactly that. 3. The trial by fire and water. What you are about to learn comes from Korean natural farming, a system that has been quietly producing extraordinary results for decades. The technique creates something called water-soluble calcium, or WCA. And you can make it in your kitchen with 2 ingredients you already own. Step 1. Collect your eggshells. Save them from breakfast, rinse them lightly, let them air dry. A dozen or 2 is plenty to start. Step 2. Roast them. Lay the shells on a baking sheet and put them in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 45 minutes. You want them to turn a toasty golden brown. This does 2 important things. It burns off the thin, organic membrane inside each shell, and it kills any lingering bacteria. Without this step, that membrane will rot and ruin everything. Step 3. Crush the roasted shells. They will be dry and brittle now. Break them down into small pieces and drop them into a glass jar. A mason jar works perfectly. Step 4. Add vinegar. Plain white vinegar or apple cider vinegar. The ratio matters. Roughly 1 part crushed shells to 10 parts vinegar by volume. So half a cup of shells gets about 5 cups of vinegar. The moment the vinegar hits the shells, you will see it happen. The jar erupts with fizzing and bubbling. That is not decoration. That is chemistry in action. The acetic acid in the vinegar is dissolving the calcium carbonate bonds, releasing carbon dioxide gas, and producing calcium acetate, a fully dissolved, plant-available form of calcium. One important warning: do not seal the jar. The gas buildup can shatter it. Cover the top with a coffee filter or a piece of cloth held on with a rubber band. Set the jar somewhere cool and dark for 7 to 10 days. When the bubbling stops completely, strain the liquid into a clean bottle. That golden liquid is concentrated, bioavailable calcium. You just unlock the vault, with nothing but vinegar and patience. 4. The long game versus the quick rescue. You have 2 powerful tools now. One works fast, the other builds lasting fertility. A smart gardener uses both. The quick rescue. Take 1 tablespoon of your water-soluble calcium and stir it into a gallon of water. Never use it undiluted. It is far too concentrated and acidic. Spray this mixture directly onto the leaves of your tomatoes, peppers, and melons in the early morning or at dusk. The calcium absorbs right through the leaf surface, bypassing the roots entirely. This is the fastest way to deliver calcium to a plant that is already struggling. You can also pour this diluted solution at the base of your plants as a soil drench the moment you see the first blossoms appear. This delivers calcium directly to the root zone during the most critical window, when fruit is just beginning to form. The long game is simpler but takes planning. Take your dried eggshells, roasted or raw, and grind them in a coffee grinder or blender until they become a fine powder. Not chunks, not flakes, powder. That surface area matters enormously. Coarse pieces sit in the soil for years doing nothing. Powder gets digested by soil microbes within a single season. Work this powder into your garden beds every fall or early spring. It behaves just like agricultural lime, gently raising the pH of acidic soil into the range where vegetables perform best. And here is one last trick worth remembering. Drop a scoop of this fine powder into the bottom of each planting hole when you set out your tomato seedlings in May. That puts a slow-release calcium reserve exactly where the roots will grow. 5. Lessons from the soil. There is something worth sitting with for a moment. An eggshell starts its life protecting something fragile. Once that job is done, most people throw it away. Purpose fulfilled, usefulness over. But the garden tells a different story. With a little heat, a little patience, and the right conditions, that discarded shell becomes one of the most valuable things you can feed your soil. Its best work was not behind it. Its best work was still waiting. So keep a bowl on the counter. Roast your shells on a quiet Sunday, Watch the vinegar fizz in the jar. These small rituals connect you to something ancient and endlessly renewable. And the next time you pour that golden water over the roots of your garden, take a moment. Look at the strong stems, the heavy fruit. Know that none of it was wasted. Not the shell, not the effort, not a single season. Until next time, keep your hands in the dirt and your heart open to what the garden still has to teach.